What's going on YouTube? Thanks for tuning into my channel once again. I have a new video to bring to you today, which is going to add to the 4-hour and 15-minute trading strategy series on my channel. Now this trade was taken on USD JPY, and I did a little something different this time around. I actually recorded the whole thing live. The reason I did this is because in the educational trading space, I see a lot of comments saying replay mode or hindsight trading. Anybody who's educating in this space knows that that's just a bunch of nonsense. It's typically a coping mechanism for people who can't understand what's being taught. Replay mode is the simplest way to teach a strategy, plain and simple. But to negate all of those silly comments, I decided to record it live. So without further ado, let's dive into the trade. All right, so I've just entered this trade on USD JPY. I'm currently on the 15-minute time frame. This is where my entry was placed. And these are the parameters here. So before we dive into the lower time frame here, I'm going to go up to the 4-hour time frame and show you the overall analysis for this pair. So on the 4-hour time frame, we can see that order flow has been bullish. However, in recent price action, we've seen a clear change of character to the downside, which prompts me to look for potential selling opportunities. Now, after that change of character was created, price left behind this order block to be mitigated. Price retraced back into that order block, even tapped into the 50%, and then started rejecting from it. So that prompts me to drop down to a lower time frame. My favorite would be the 15-minute. As soon as price tapped into that zone, we can then monitor the lower time frame for potential entry opportunities. On the 15-minute time frame, this is where the entry was placed. We can see that price tapped into the 4-hour zone, purged buy-side liquidity from these highs here, and then dropped to the downside, creating a lower time frame change of character right here. And I might as well label this the liquidity grab as well, just so we're all on the same page. And yeah, that's about it so far. We can see that we're experiencing some rejection from this 15-minute zone. However, nothing too significant yet. My stop loss is placed just above these highs here. I just rounded it up to 15 pips because I like to do that sometimes. I like even rounded numbers for my stop losses. So yeah, we'll see how this goes. I'd like to see a big push to the downside. The main thing that I'm looking for is for this low to be broken. Once that happens, I might even take partials from that point and then move my stop loss to break even. We'll see. But overall, I'm looking for at least that low to be violated because that would signify to me that there's a good probability of price continuing to push to the downside. So that's about it for now. I will update as the trade progresses. Okay, so I'm back at my office now. I went to the gym for a couple hours. Now that I'm back, I see that price has pushed well into the downside in my favor, creating significant profit. The maximum we reached here was 1.9 R. I have a rule where at 1 to 2 R, I'll take partial profits. So I just needed to go a little bit lower, right about there, and then I will take partial profits. I don't, however, think I'm going to move my stop loss to break even because I would likely get stopped out. Let me explain why. Let me just drag this position back a little bit. You'll see that as we broke structure right here, that left behind a new order block to trade from, a new refined supply zone, right? Which is right here. Let me just turn off the indicator for a moment and I'll manually highlight it just so it is very clear. So this zone right here, there's a high likelihood that we're going to tap into that zone before moving further down. So I would really like to just secure partial profits at 1 to 2 risk to reward ratio and then not move my stop loss to break even because we're likely going to test my entry again, which is right around this new order block before pushing to the downside. However, with this impulsive move to the downside, that gives me all the confidence I need in this trade. So I'm very happy with how this trade has panned out so far. We are obviously reacting to this 15-minute demand zone, but I do believe it's quite insignificant. The reason being there's so much liquidity built up underneath it in a lot of different forms. But we have this minor trend line liquidity. We have imbalance here that needs to be filled. And of course, we have a big reason for price to trade lower, which is of course this order block down here. So overall, there's plenty of reason for price to head more towards the downside. I don't see this demand zone holding long-term and pushing price into my stop loss. So I am confident holding this trade without moving my stop loss to break even. But like I said, as soon as we get to 1 to 2 R, I'm likely going to take partial profits and see how it develops from there. I'll update you guys shortly. Okay, it is a few hours later. We've seen some more progression now. Price pushed down past this minor 15-minute supply zone, or sorry, demand zone right here. Clearly broke through that. Not with too much momentum, but we did break through it nonetheless. We still have a ton of liquidity down here and an unmitigated bullish order block way down here. So that's where the overall target is. I don't know if I'm going to hold until the overall target. I may even consider taking profit here or here. At the very least, I would be taking partials there. But I'm not too sure just yet. We'll see how long I want to hold this for. What kind of momentum is involved, I'm not too sure just yet. As soon as price violated this low right here, which was the low of that demand zone, the 15-minute demand zone, I did take partial profit. So I took 50% of my position off, and I'm just leaving the rest to run until I'm comfortable closing it. So like I said, I could close the whole thing at this low here or this low here if we get there. We'll see what happens. But for now, I have closed partial profit and I'm just letting it run. Right now, we're only a couple hours away from the session, the end of session, and then the rollover period before Asian session. Right now, it is 4:44 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, so New York time. New York Stock Exchange is closed, and around 5:30, we're going to get that rollover period. So we'll see what happens. I'm going to hold it until the next session and then see how this one progresses. So just another quick update. I'm going to move my stop loss in profit to this high right here. Let me just label that. That's where I'm going to move my stop loss to. And the reason for that is because at this point, I don't see price going all the way back to my entry. And if it did, that would be quite frustrating. So I would at least want to get taken out for additional profit on top of what I already had secured. But even more so than that, let me get this out of the way for a second. So price did violate this low right here. I'm not going to label it a break of structure just yet because it could simply be a liquidity grab. We'll see what happens. But I don't believe price is going to trade any higher than this range right here. All of this sideways movement during the afternoon of New York session, and then we get this huge push to the downside. I could definitely see a retracement back into this order block here before another push to the downside, but we'll see what happens. I'm not too sure. What I would like to do though, as I said, is move my stop loss in profit to this point here, because then I would feel much more comfortable leaving the rest of the position run, because worst case scenario during Asian or London session, if it wants to reverse on me when I'm not able to monitor my chart, then I'll at least walk away with more profit than I had already secured. Now, it would also be nice to see price reach this low, and then I would certainly consider closing the entire position if I'm available at the time. Like if I'm aware of it happening, then I'll certainly consider closing my position here. But depending on how it reacts, I might just let it run all the way to the final target. So if I go up a time frame to the 1 hour time frame, there's no real reason for price to react to this zone. As you can see, my indicator labeled this as an order block, which it technically is, but I don't see it as being a major reversal point for price, because if we look at what this zone did, it created a big push to the upside, but then we actually failed to break this high right here. So it didn't actually do anything to disrupt market structure. We then saw a pullback and then a push to the upside, which inevitably broke this market structure here. But this order block down here wasn't actually responsible for breaking anything other than minor internal structure, which I'm not too concerned with in this trade. So with that being said, I don't see this zone holding long-term either. So that definitely does make me feel more confident in my overall target. But the bottom line is I don't know if I'm willing to hold this trade until the target, because it could take quite some time. I typically don't like to hold things during London session because that's when I'm sleeping. So I don't know. We'll see what happens. I will record another update as soon as some changes happen where it would warrant an update. All right, so the final update for this trade, I unfortunately was stopped out at my trailing stop loss. So as I mentioned previously, I put my stop loss right at this high right here. Price retraced right back into it, just wicked it, and then melted all the way down to my take profit. It actually blew through the 15-minute demand zone that I was targeting for my final take profit. So that didn't hold, but it was still a good area to take a final profit. However, this pair had other plans for me. Luckily I took 50% partials at 1 to 2 risk to reward. And then I also because I trailed the stop loss into profit, I managed to make some more profit when I got stopped out here. Obviously it is disappointing because it went in my favor all the way towards the take profit. But it's easy for me in hindsight to say, well, I could have done this, I should have done this. The reality is, at the time, in the heat of the moment, I felt that moving my stop loss to this point right here was the safest and most logical thing to do at the time, right? Obviously in hindsight, I'm looking at it differently, and I'm going to take this into account for the next time I run into a situation like this, especially when there was such a huge imbalance here. I guess price just needed to tap into that and then melt away from that point on. But it is what it is. Some profit is better than no profit, so this is still a winning trade for me, and I'm very happy with how it played out overall.